Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Balance of power decided in the Senate narrowly in the Democrats' favor. A narrow majority will mark the House as well. Navigating Congress with a slim majority puts even more weight on the role of top leadership. But for both parties, picking a leader is proving challenging. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
Lawmakers are back in D.C. and now's the time to pick party leadership for the new Congress. Republicans moving quicker than Democrats, taking votes this week. Though some Senate Republicans want to delay. Senators including Marco Rubio, Ron Johnson, Lindsey Graham, and Ted Cruz want to wait to see the results in Georgia. Republicans won't hold the majority in the Senate, as the latest win in Nevada secured 50 seats for Democrats.
Three reasons that we defied all the expectations. First, we had great candidates. Our candidates cared about people.
Senator Chuck Schumer is expected to lead Senate Democrats. A formal vote will be held in December. But who will be the House Democrats' top leader? Pelosi is still holding back her plans.
The wishes of my family and the wishes of my caucus, but none of it will be very much considered until we see what the outcome of all of this is.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is eager to replace the Speaker.
Kevin McCarthy has worked extremely hard to understand how to get things done, work with people on both sides of the aisle.
House Republicans will take a vote tomorrow, but McCarthy's bid faces pushback. Representative Andy Biggs says there will be a challenger, and other members saying it's not a bad idea.
For debate and deliberation and discussion, and some of that discussion will be passionate, and that's okay, because democracy is supposed to be a little messy.
While other members like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene call it a bad strategy due to the razor-thin margin the GOP is projected to take. The party needs to secure 6 or more seats for a slim majority in the chamber.
Melina, even if Republicans do take the House, as it's looking like they will, it's clear it will be a very small margin. Will this make it difficult for Congress to move any type of legislation?
Yeah, Steve, so it will be challenging for congressional leadership to move legislation quickly during this next Congress. And I say that because under the scenario that you just mentioned, Republicans would hold the majority by a very slim margin in the House, and Democrats hold the majority by a very slim margin in the Senate. And then you have, of course, Democrats controlling the White House. So not only would Republicans in the House have to work with Democrats in the Senate and President Biden in the White House, but Republican leadership in the House will have to work within their own party very closely to get things passed. This is because you need 218 votes to pass anything in the House. If Republicans, say, hold the majority by 220 seats, that means they can't really lose any votes on any legislation that they're trying to pass if all Democrats are voting against what they're putting forward on the floor. So this can become challenging when you have a caucus like the House Freedom Caucus who isn't afraid to buck party leadership. Not saying that's a bad thing. This is the way our democratic process works, but this does just showcase how it will be difficult for leadership to work within this very slim margin come January. Steve, back to you.
Thank you for that, Melina. And Arizona and Nevada are still counting their ballots days after the election. Many Americans raising concerns about election integrity and the security of the elections in those two states. Joining us to discuss this past election, we have Rick Mehta, a former Senate candidate from New Jersey. Rick Mehta, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Rick, millions of Americans are watching this past election through a very similar lens that they did with 2020. Nevada and Arizona vote count being slow-rolled, with the Democrats slightly edging out the Republican for the win. Should the American people be, rest assured that this is normal and their election is fair and secure?
I got to tell you, not having results on election day, that is far from normal. We saw that in 2020 when many governors across the state, in fact, my state of New Jersey, made everything vote by mail. And it took months to do the final tally of the final vote. I mean, the American public's demand and expect transparency, accountability, and they should know the results on the day. I mean, we are one of the most powerful countries in the entire world. Many countries that are even middle income, low income, that have even more broken systems than we do, can get results on the same day. I think every American should be concerned about the process in which the elections and voting and polling has been taking place, especially states like Arizona and Nevada, where it just takes weeks and weeks to do counting. You have states like Florida that has millions of more residents, and they're able to get results right away. So something is not being done correctly.
Rick, with regard to the elections themselves, I want to ask you about some certain demographic blocks. We've heard a lot about the Hispanic vote gravitating toward conservatives over the past few years. What about, say, the Asian vote, black voters, and more specifically this past cycle?
You know, I'll tell you, the minority vote in general, the black and brown vote, they're not to be taken for granted among the Democrats. I can tell you that. I think a lot more Asian Americans, and even when you have to get more demographically specific, Indian Americans, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, you know, many of them do tend to be more leaning towards the conservative terms of values, but socially yet still vote for more progressive candidates. And right now, I think one of the biggest driving factors is the economy. We saw in my state of New Jersey, more than 33% of our small businesses shut down, where more than 50% of them are run by immigrants and those from immigrant families. And so, you know, when you start to peel that back a little bit, you see the Hispanic vote starting to trend towards more conservatives, but you're also seeing some more demographical representation. We saw Anna Paulina win her seat in Florida, and we've seen more and more Hispanic leaders step up and run for the Republican Party and win and do incredibly well. We haven't quite seen that trend yet among the Asian Americans. We have young Kim out in California, but then we had a real dynamic leader in Rhode Island, Alan Fung, you know, who came very close, you know, a Chinese American, a Republican, to oust, you know, another Democrat in a heavily Democratic area. So I think we're starting to see more trends switching between left, right, but again, not a block to be taken for granted.
I want to get your thoughts on Kevin McCarthy's bid for Speaker. There's talk of a challenger within the Republican Party. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think we have to see what happens after the runoff for the Senate, and we still have to see whether, you know, the House votes are still coming in. There's still a few undecided races out there, but the truth is that, you know, the red wave that we were hoping for, while it didn't happen, we still have, you know, the Republicans still have control of the House, or should. And, you know, unfortunately, the Senate didn't work out. But the truth is, we have to find who is going to be the true leader that can get our principles and our values out there and champion them. And so I think a lot of questions have to be asked if Kevin McCarthy is going to be or can continue to be that right leader for the House.
Rick, you ran for Congress this past cycle. You also ran a very formidable Senate campaign in 2020, garnering over 40% of the vote in the general election. Any future plans for you?
That's a great question. Let's see how 23 and 24 play out. I'll tell you, New Jersey also is a swing state. You know, it's a bellwether. Everyone says that it's a hard Democrat. Not true. We saw in 21 the Republican governor come within 2 points of ousting an incumbent popular Democrat. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for New Jersey to be purple. Let's see how the next cycles play out. But certainly Rick Maida's not going anywhere.
Rick Maida, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And President Biden and Xi Jinping today had their first face-to-face meeting since President Biden took office. What the two discussed amid rising tensions between the two countries. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
On Monday, Biden and Xi met for nearly 3 hours to hash out some of the thorniest issues in their relationship. That includes Taiwan, China's human rights abuses, and an ongoing competition. Here's what Biden said about the two countries after the meeting.
We're going to compete vigorously, but I'm not looking for conflict. I absolutely believe there need not be a new Cold War.
And Biden notably said this about Taiwan.
And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan. And I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all.
While Biden said the U.S. is committed to promoting peace in the Taiwan Strait, the Chinese Communist Party's readout of the meeting said there could be no peace with an independent Taiwan. And here's China expert Gordon Chang on Biden's Taiwan remarks.
President Biden was firm on his points. The point that was the most important was that the United States would oppose any unilateral move on the part of either side to change the status quo.
But Chang also knows a caveat.
If the Chinese don't believe President Biden's warnings on Ukraine, then they very well may not believe his warnings on Taiwan.
Meanwhile, human rights is another point of friction. Here's what Biden said.
He was clear and I was clear. They will defend American interests and values, promote universal human rights.
The White House added that Biden raised concerns to Xi about China's human rights abuses in Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong, but the Chinese statement made zero mention of them. Despite such diverging talking points, Biden told Xi that the U.S. is willing to work with him on issues like climate and food security.
The United States stands ready to do just that, work with you if that's what you desire.
But some lawmakers are sounding the alarm. Senator Marsha Blackburn said in a tweet, quote, Xi Jinping is focused on global domination, not working with the Biden administration on climate change. And Senator Tom Cotton accused Biden of being weak, saying Biden failed to acknowledge China's Cold War against the U.S., adding that it would further endanger Taiwan and embolden Xi. Meanwhile, the two pledged to keep communication lines open, and the White House announced that Secretary of State Antony Blinken would travel to China to follow up on Monday's meeting. Reporting from the White House, Arus Tao, NTD News.
Welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Former President Trump issued a new court filing on the Mar-a-Lago documents today. He argued that as president, he had the authority to decide which White House documents were his to keep. Trump says he decided before leaving office that the records he took to Mar-a-Lago were personal documents. The former president says that the federal government can sue him if it disagrees. Trump's filing comes amid an ongoing criminal investigation into the documents that the FBI seized back in August. Some of them are marked as classified. Meanwhile, sources close to Trump say that he will make a big announcement on the 2024 presidential run tomorrow night. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.